Prologue. Amanda looked in the mirror to check her hair and makeup. Although a 50-something woman, she looked at least 10 years younger. With her dark blonde hair cascading down to her shoulders, she had an easy beauty that others immediately responded to. Although flawless as always, she checked her makeup for one last time, touching up her deep red lipstick before looking deeply into the reflection of her own eyes. In an instant, she saw the inner happiness which she now felt. The last 2 years had been unbelievable for Amanda, and all of the unhappiness she had felt in her life was now a dim and distant memory. As she made the final preparations for the most important journey of her life, she drifted off into a daydream thinking about everything that had happened to get her to where she was now. Chapter 1. Early days. Michael was a child of the 1960s, no brothers or sisters but loving parents who doted on him. He did all the things boys normally do but equally enjoyed his own company and loved to read. He liked the girls at school, especially the pretty ones, but even at his young age, he felt an attraction to them. By the time he was a teenager, though, the girls were a dim and distant memory sent to an all-boys school. There was little opportunity to talk to girls and he could only watch from afar, marveling at them as they started to grow into young women. When Michael was asleep, he sometimes dreamt that he was a girl and, as he grew into a teenager, increasingly felt the frustration of being unable to be a part of their world. About this time, 2 things happened that sealed his fate. The first was when his mother told him that she had read a book by someone who had had a sex change, and the second was finding a pair of his mother's tights and trying them on while she was out of the house. Both had a profound effect. Could men really be turned into women? Why did he have such strong sexual feelings from women's clothing? Still not fully grown, Michael soon found out that his mother's clothes and shoes fit him and so would take the opportunity when the house was empty to fully dress. He loved the sensation of the soft clothing against his immature skin and wished with all his heart that he could have been born a girl. However, the feeling of guilt about what he was doing, and what he was feeling as a result, and the dread of being found out was overpowering, and increased opportunities to mix with girls cooled his transgender desires for the time being. Moving on a few years and with a good job, Michael was living alone and the urges started to return. He realized that he could buy clothing from supermarkets without having to confront sales assistants and so started the cycles of buy, wear, purge that would become a repeat feature of his life. Although Michael lacked the success with girls that many of his friends enjoyed, he did find that when he was in a relationship, his urges went away and, as many others have mistakenly believed, thought that marriage would cure him. Sure enough, when he met and married his wife, he enjoyed seeing her wearing the type of clothing he would once have craved for himself and the desire to dress evaporated. Or so he thought. Chapter 2. A love rekindled. Marriage is a funny thing. After the initial flush of love and passion, things settle down into a routine. People grow older and whereas short skirts and 4-inch heels were once mandatory dress for an evening out, they now meant cold legs and aching feet. Children increase the burdens tenfold and, eventually, Michael realized that the girl he married was gone forever, replaced by a middle-aged woman with a wardrobe to match. It was then that the what-ifs started. What if he bought a pair of high heels, just to see what they felt like? What if he bought an outfit to go with the shoes? What if he bought a wig to give him a feminine hairstyle? What if he bought makeup to see how good he could look as a woman? There was only one way to find out and, being home a lot while his wife was at work, he had plenty of time to experiment. What he found out surprised him. The sexual urges he once felt from dressing in women's clothes had gone to be replaced with feelings of elation and calm as if he had finally become the person he should always have been. He knew he could never pass as a woman, but that didn't matter. As long as he had long hair and wore skirts, dresses and high heels, he was, for that moment, a true woman and that's all that mattered to him. From time to time, guilt would get the better of him and he would purge everything, only to grieve for its loss and replace it all. All he needed to do was to make sure everything was packed away and hidden when he had finished. And that's where things started to go wrong. One day, as he prepared for a dressing session, he realized that his makeup bag was not in the case. He looked everywhere but couldn't find it and realized that he had to confess all to his wife in case she found it. He prepared himself and, when she got home that evening, sat her down and confessed everything. Tears and upset followed, and Michael realized that he had done something very bad. Dressing as a woman was bad enough in his wife's eyes, but far worse was the deception in not telling her about his feelings sooner. Over the coming weeks, his wife tried very hard to understand but eventually felt that enough was enough and gave him an ultimatum: stop dressing or end the marriage. Michael chose to preserve the family and purge his clothes for what he was sure was the final time. However, as almost everyone in his position finds out, the urges never disappear, and slowly but surely, he slipped back into his old ways, believing that the hiding place he had found would never be discovered. It was. And with that, 5 words blew his life apart. That's it, then. We're finished. As he moved out of the family home into a dingy 1-bedroom flat in a not very nice part of town, Michael really wondered whether it had all been worth it. Was seeing his legs a pair of high heels and stockings really more important than seeing his children? Had he really lost his house for the sake of a wig? Was his social life really only worth a lipstick and eyeliner? Ironically, the realization of what he had done drove him to bundle his collection of female clothes, shoes and makeup up and put the whole lot out with the rubbish. It would never give him back what he had lost, but, in a strange sort of way, he felt it was a price he had to pay. He was now completely alone with only his memories for company. Had his life really come to this? Would things ever get any better? And then he met Sue. Chapter 3: The Date, and a surprise as he sat alone in his flat as he had done more or less every night since his marriage broke down, Michael contemplated his situation. Ironically, he'd not felt like cross-dressing much since the breakup. His feelings of guilt at breaking up his family had put paid to that. So there was really nothing else to do other than to sit there, on his own, and feel sorry for himself. Finally, he thought that enough was enough and put his coat and shoes on to go to the local convenience store for some beer and, if he was lucky, a half-decent DVD to watch. Entering the store, he exchanged his usual pleasantries with the female security guard, quickly picked up and paid for his beer and DVD and walked towards the exit. "Not out on the town tonight?" asked the security guard. "Sadly, not." "Nowhere to go on a Friday night?" she asked. "More a case of no one to go with, I'm afraid." Now the security guard, although female, was the exact opposite of Michael's taste in women. He liked long flowing locks, her hair was tied back in a ponytail, he liked women to be made up, her face was devoid of all cosmetics, he liked women in skirts and dresses, her security guard uniform of thick navy sweater and trousers hardly fit the bill, and her sensible flat lace-ups were anything but the stilettos Michael liked. But there was something about her, a natural beauty that Michael all of a sudden found irresistible. "I don't suppose," he started. At that moment, a commotion started in the shop. "Got to go," said the security guard, who then reached into her pocket, pulled out a card, scribbled a quick note and handed it to Michael. With that she was gone. Michael left the shop and looked at the card. On it was written a phone number, and then the guard had signed it Sue X. Michael walked home in a bit of a daze. Sue definitively did not seem to be his type, and yet his heart fluttered for reasons he could just not work out. Later that evening, he called her, and after a short conversation, they agreed to meet the following evening for a meal. The next day was Saturday, and Michael went about his normal routine: shopping, washing, and ironing. By the afternoon, he was cooling about the prospect of his date and almost called Sue to call it off. However, having nothing else to do, he got ready and went to the restaurant. He arrived early, took his seat and ordered a bottle of wine while he waited. "Hello, Michael." Michael looked up, slightly startled to see Sue standing by him. But not the Sue he remembered. This Sue was wearing a black low-cut dress and shoes with 4-inch stiletto heels. Her makeup was perfect and her hair cascaded down onto her shoulders. You look amazing," exclaimed Michael, all of a sudden feeling that his open-necked shirt was possibly not entirely appropriate. "Well, thank you, kind sir," replied Sue with a wry smile. And with that, Michael jumped up, helped Sue to her seat and settled down for what was undoubtedly the date he was not expecting. After probably the most enjoyable meal Michael had ever had, and with the restaurant emptying, he helped Sue with her coat and asked if he could walk her home. "Okay, I'll trust you to be good," she teased, "it's not far." Linking arms, they walked the quarter-mile or so back to Sue's flat. "Thank you for a perfect evening," said Michael. "No, it's me who should be thanking you," replied Sue. "Would you like to come in for a coffee?" They entered Sue's flat. Michael took a seat in the lounge while Sue made the coffee. He looked around the room, nothing out of the ordinary apart from a single photograph of a rather overweight, slightly disheveled-looking man immediately above a glamour portrait of Sue. Studying the pictures, Michael could see a slight facial resemblance between the two. "Your brother?" asked Michael as Sue brought the coffees in. The question seemed to knock Sue off guard. She took a seat next to Michael on the sofa, looked down for a moment, then looked him straight in the eye and said, "No, he's not my brother. It's me. I'm transsexual." "You're joking. How could someone like him become you?" "Dieting, hormones and a very clever surgeon," replied Sue, who then somewhat enigmatically added, "But I have a feeling that you won't have a problem with it." "And what makes you think that?" Sue put her finger over Michael's mouth. "Shoo. No more questions for now." "But am I right?" She took her finger away and looked straight at Michael, her tongue touching her top lip provocatively, and waited for his answer. Michael looked back at her for a moment and then closed his eyes as he leant forward and kissed her passionately. He never wanted that kiss to end, but finally, Sue pulled away, stood up and took a hesitant Michael by the hand. "Come on, I won't bite, and I'm all woman," she teased, and, with that, Michael stood up and followed her into the bedroom. Chapter 4: A corner turned. After a night of passion, the like of which Michael had never experienced before, he awoke to see Sue standing over him with a tray of toast and coffee. She had certainly been right about being all woman, and Michael couldn't help admiring her breasts, which her negligee did little to hide. "So," he started, "what's your story?" Sue sat down and told Michael the story of her life. How she had always felt that she had been born the wrong gender but had kept her feelings secret and lived the life of a male to please her family. How when things had got too much and she finally decided to transition, her family completely disowned her and she lost everything: her house, her career, her friends. How she kept the picture of her former self on display to remind herself how far she had come. When she had finished, Michael reached over and kissed her on the cheek. "Thank you, that must have been really hard for you. But one thing puzzles me. What made you think that I wouldn't have a problem with being with a transsexual? You can call it feminine intuition if you want. Alternatively, call it observation. Firstly, when I date guys, they normally can't take their eyes off my chest. You, on the other hand, kept sneaking furtive glances at my shoes. This generally means either you work in the fashion industry or you have an unhealthy interest in ladies' feet. Secondly, as a security guard, it's my job to keep a watch on our shop customers. Last week, you came in and bought a pack of ladies' tights. Normally, this means one of two things: your wife has sent you or they're for you. Now the fact that you asked me out indicates that you're either single or a rampant adulterer. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that you're single, but this means the tights were for you, which, in turn, means that your interest in my shoes resulted from a similar interest in cross-dressing. I may have been buying the tights for an amateur dramatics production and have an innocent interest in fashion, though. Were you, and do you? No. You're quite right. They were for me, and I'm a cross-dresser. This time, Sue reached over and took Michael's hand. It's all right, I obviously don't have a problem with this sort of thing. Why don't you tell me everything? and so Michael did, from his first memories, right up to the breakdown of his marriage. Then he asked Sue, "Why me? Surely men would be lining up to date a woman as beautiful as you? If I was a genetic woman, then possibly. But I'm not, and as soon as I tell them my past, which I think is only right to do, I don't see them for dust. If I'm lucky, I'm told that I'm a wonderful woman, but they can't handle my past. If I'm unlucky, I just get a torrent of abuse and threats. After the last particularly nasty experience, I realized that I need a soulmate, someone who understands me, and, after I saw you by the tights, I wondered if you were the one." When he had finished, Sue asked him, "Now let me ask you something. What are you feeling right now?" "I'm feeling on cloud 9 because I've just met and spent the night with the most amazing woman." "Is that all?" Yes," replied Michael unconvincingly. Sue's smile vanished and a serious expression came over her. "Look, Michael, you're a sweet guy, but if you want this to be anything more than a one-night stand, you have to be completely honest with me. I value honesty above everything else as, prior to my transition, my whole life was based on dishonesty and deception. In return, I also expect honesty from others, so I'll ask you just one more time, what do you feel right now?" Michael took a deep breath. "I'm feeling on cloud 9 because I've just met and spent the night with the most amazing woman. Part of me wants to be the strong man, taking care of her and providing for her. But I'm also tied up in knots. All of the emotions I used to feel are coming back, but I still don't know the answer to the basic question, what am I? Am I a cross-dresser, transsexual, or do I just get turned on by trans women? When I saw you last night, I wanted to take you in my arms and hold on to you forever, but I also saw you as the woman I always imagined myself to be if I went down the road to transition. Seeing the results of your transition proved to me that, if I wanted to, I could have a successful transition too. The problem is that I just don't understand my feelings or know what I really want." He then chuckled and added, "But I do know I'd really like to try on the shoes you were wearing last night." With a giggle, Sue handed him the shoes and the pair of black hold-up stockings she had also worn the night before. "Here you are then." Michael gently pulled on the stockings and then slipped his feet into the shoes before standing up and admiring his reflection in the mirror. "Great legs, you were obviously made for this. As for not knowing what you are, we'd better start trying to find out, hadn't we?" And with that, Sue took Michael's hand, led him into her spare room and showed him a wardrobe full of clothes. "I don't wear these anymore as most are too big for me now, but I think they'd be the perfect size for you. You'll find wigs on the top shelf and, when you're finished, I'll do your makeup for you." With that, Sue left the room, leaving Michael feeling like a child in a sweet shop. Was something about to go right in his life at last? About 20 minutes later, Michael emerged in a black dress, black high-heeled stilettos and a dark blonde wig. In fact, his outfit bore more than a passing resemblance to Sue's the night before. Sue smiled and set to work on Michael's makeup. About half an hour later, it was done and she led him to the mirror. Michael stared at his reflection for several minutes and then a tear ran down his cheek. "Thank you so much, this is all I ever wanted. All my life, I've waited for this moment to see myself as a beautiful woman, the woman I've often wished I was. I just feel wonderful." "It seems a shame to keep you hidden, then," replied Sue, "let's go out." She looked at Michael and then added, "You'll need to change, though. You'll never blend in that outfit on a Sunday morning, and those shoes are designed for sitting down, 2 minutes of walking in them and you'll be begging for mercy." Sue found Michael some more appropriate clothes for their walk and off they went arm in arm. All of a sudden, Sue turned to Michael. "What should I call you?" "Michael doesn't seem particularly appropriate now." "Well, I always imagined being called Amanda, so how about that?" Sue let out a giggle. "That's probably not the most appropriate name for people like us, Amanda," she spelled out, "but if it makes you feel comfortable, Amanda it is, so come on Amanda, let's enjoy the moment," and off they went. Chapter 5. The decision. Over the following months, Sue and Michael/Amanda became increasingly close, finally selling their respective flats and moving in together. Michael was increasingly spending time as Amanda and becoming ever more comfortable with his female persona. He had made the effort to lose weight and was now close to Sue in size. The feeling of calm when he put on a dress and slipped into a pair of heels was still as strong as ever, and, now that his hair had grown long, he no longer needed to wear a wig. In fact, he was starting to find that his previous misgivings about living full-time were evaporating, and time spent as Michael was now at best irrelevant and at worst deeply dissatisfying. Sue sensed this, and one Sunday morning, about a year after their first date together, asked, "So should I still think of you as Michael, or is it just Amanda from now on?" Michael thought for a moment and replied, "All my life, I've been fighting this, but, after spending the last year with you, I no longer understand why. I've always wished I was female but never felt that transition was the right approach. I guess I just felt I had too much to lose, but I can now see that I have so much to gain. I would really like to say that I want to be Amanda for the rest of my life, but I still have a nagging doubt. What do you think?" "Michael, I want you to go and put on the clothes you wore to our first date." Michael looked crestfallen. "You called me Michael, does this mean?" Sue placed her finger over Michael's lips, just as she had done on that first evening. "Shoo. No questions, just do it for me." Michael went into the bedroom and changed as instructed. He emerged about 5 minutes later, and Sue took him by the hand and led him to the mirror. "Take a good look. What do you see? Your hair is long and feminine, your eyebrows are arched and feminine. Your skin is in better condition than ever, thanks to your moisturizers. Thanks to electrolysis and laser treatment, you no longer need to shave. These clothes are practically hanging off you as you've lost so much weight, and your whole posture now looks feminine. Michael is fading away, and I think we should let him go, but, before we do..." Sue turned to face Michael, looked into his eyes and said goodbye Michael before passionately kissing him. After several minutes, Sue pulled away and said it's time for Michael to go now. Michael understood exactly what Sue meant and disappeared into the bedroom, emerging 20 minutes later fully made up with a hint of perfume and a loose-fitting baggy sweater over a mini skirt. Amanda had arrived for good. Sue looked into Amanda's eyes and saw happiness, the like of which she had never seen before. "My darling Amanda, I'll be there for you for every step of your journey. The road ahead will be challenging with much emotional and physical pain, but, together, we'll get you through it. Tomorrow, we'll make an appointment for you to see the gender therapist who'll be able to assess you and set you on the path to hormone therapy and advise you on the surgeries you need. We've got a lot to do to reverse the effects of several decades of testosterone, so let's make a start by helping Michael move out completely." And with that, Sue and Amanda embraced in a long and passionate kiss before the two of them set to work packing Michael's clothes up to donate to charity. Chapter 6. Changes. Slowly but surely, Amanda's body changed. At first the changes were almost imperceptible, but after a few months, she could tell that her hips and breasts were developing and her face had taken on a more feminine look, with her cheekbones becoming more prominent. However, for her, the changes weren't fast enough, and so she spent time researching facial surgeons and finally found one she was comfortable with who could reshape her face with feminization surgery and give her the breasts she had dreamed of. The only problem was he was based in South America, but Sue felt that this was a great excuse for a holiday, even if Amanda would emerge swathed in bandages looking as if she'd just done 15 rounds with Mike Tyson. However, it was one thing putting on makeup and taking pills every day. It was a completely different proposition committing to surgery, which included radical reshaping of the bones of her skull, jaw and nose, not to mention the hairline adjustment, eyebrow lift, facelift and Adam's apple reduction, all of which she knew could cause discomfort for several weeks. And that was before she factored in surgery on her larynx to feminize her voice, which would mean she would have to remain silent for several weeks afterwards. In fact, the only thing she didn't fear was the breast augmentation, which seemed insignificant in comparison. However, no one said that the pursuit of femininity was going to be easy, and so, with Sue by her side, she made the journey. Coming round from the surgery, she was covered in bandages and dosed up with painkillers to make life as tolerable as possible. Her surgeon seemed pleased with his work, and certainly, when she had fully come round from the anesthetic, she marveled at the two mounds under her nightdress top and gently caressed them to ensure that they were truly part of her. Over the next few days, her bandages were gradually removed to reveal swelling and bruising, but, as these subsided, she started to see the new her emerging, and she liked what she saw. Still, though, she had to remain silent until her vocal cords had fully healed. A few days later, she was discharged from hospital and joined Sue in her hotel room, which they used as a base to enjoy a few days' holiday and see the sights. Soon it was time to return home, but, before doing so, they had one last appointment at the clinic. "So, Amanda, do you like what you see now?" Amanda nodded her approval. "Why don't you try to answer me?" "Yes, thank you, doctor, it's wonderful." Amanda's new voice surprised her. Slightly husky but quite a lot higher than before and unmistakably female, she now knew that the pain had been worthwhile and no one need ever know her secret. Hugging the surgeon and with tears of joy streaming down her face, Amanda left with Sue for the journey home. Over the coming months, the bruising, swelling and numbness disappeared and Amanda became ever more confident in her new persona. As she took a new job on the cosmetics counter of the local department store, no one guessed that she had once been male, and her sales figures made it abundantly clear that men went out of their way to be served by her, most, but possibly not all, buying gifts for their wives, of course, and women valued the advice from someone so obviously expert in their field. But most importantly, Amanda was finally becoming who she was always meant to be. She loved being a woman and, whilst she was not proud of the pain and upset that she had caused her wife and children, she reflected on the fact that, if her wife had been more understanding, none of her dreams would have come true. But most of all, she had Sue in her life, her soul mate who had shown her the way, and for that she would be eternally grateful. Epilogue: Amanda was jolted back to reality from her daydream by the sound of a car horn outside. "Come on, darling, it's time for us to go to the airport. Just think, the next time you enter our house, you'll finally be a complete woman, and I'm so proud of you." And with that, Sue kissed Amanda on the cheek before they both picked up their bags and made their way to the taxi waiting outside.